Welcome to Good News, Bad News, the Libertarian Christian Roundtable, where every other week we challenge the status quo and give you the libertarian Christian analysis of what's happening in your world.
Live from different parts of the United States, it's the Libertarian Roundtable with our host, Norman Horn.
Thanks, Matt. Good to be back with you tonight. And it is Thanksgiving week, folks, but we've had a lot of interesting things happening in the past couple of weeks. 2 weeks ago, we led off with the Kyle Rittenhouse case, and we have big news on that. I mean, obviously, it's one of the biggest stories of the last week, and that is that Kyle Rittenhouse was indeed acquitted on all charges, which is pretty remarkable. And of course, this has gotten a number of people in the left up in arms. And a number of people on the right have probably overemphasized just how important it really is, I suppose. But at the very least, what we are very happy to affirm is that this young man did indeed act in self-defense. It has been recognized by the jury of his peers. The man is going to be free. So that's great to see. And he's even gone on to have some interviews where he's actually like dissed on some of his former attorneys, which is pretty significant because he basically accused them of allowing him to rot in jail, not posting bail, so that they could raise more money on his behalf, or supposedly on his behalf.
Right.
This is pretty wild when you think about it. What do you guys see in from your points of view on this whole topic? Because this is very strange. I mean, just from my point of view, it's been wild to see the aftermath of this already, and just the level of vitriol and just insanity that's coming out. I mean, from the misuses of language to try and describe it, to just all the new revelations of what's coming out. What do you guys think?
I would give you my opinion, but it's stuck in a container off the shore of California.
That's for another segment. Hold on.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, man.
Go ahead, Carrie.
Well, I was just going to say, I think it's interesting because the thing that I have noticed, the thing that I have noticed is that many people who thought, no thanks to the media, that the people that Rittenhouse shot were Black or, were peaceful. Like, the number of people who are now going, oh, wow, I didn't actually know these facts. Like, how is it possible that I didn't know these things? And so I think, number one, that's interesting to see that there are, in fact, people who are willing to correct themselves and say, oops, we didn't know this. On the other hand, stop watching corporate media. Because that's who fed you the lies.
Because according to them, Kyle was going in just with a big gun, and these three guys came up to me like, Kyle, no, stop. And he was like, no, I'm not going to stop.
And one of the things that Kyle Rittenhouse said in his interview, I believe it was with Tucker Carlson, is that he supports Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
And I mean, that threw the right for a loop. Like, they were like, how
dare we let him get acquitted now?
But one thing that I want to point out, and I did point out on Twitter, I did find out, and I forget where I heard this from, but it was one of the I think it was one of the local news sources that was reporting on it. The jury was comprised of a majority of women. It was 7 women and 5 men. And I thought that was really interesting because the people who are buying up the most guns over the past 2 years have been women. So I think it's interesting to point out that not all women carry the feminist banner or have this awkward idea of self-defense or, let's sing Kumbaya. I think they really understand it. And so I was pleased to see that was the case.
I do have gun sales here for 2021. majority women, but they were all beat out by Ted Nugent. So,
and they weren't all stuck on crates out of the shore of California.
No, they were American made. So.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Well, and I will say that there's currently a case. I guess it's not really current. I think it's in appeals process, but it's a woman who was trafficked, and she used a gun in self-defense in order to free herself from her trafficker, and she is serving time for murder. And it was in Kenosha. She's in Kenosha. So I think it's important to understand that, probably the Rittenhouse trial got the verdict that it did in part because of how publicized it was. I'm not willing to say, it's because he was male or anything like that. But this isn't an open and shut case of, lethal use of force in self-defense. There's another case in Kenosha where a woman is actually in prison for murdering her trafficker.
Well, and it's interesting because I've seen similar sorts of things as well, and had these things pointed out. And it's interesting that sometimes you even see those of more of the, shall we say, social justice contingent. They're like, well, this woman's serving time, and Kyle Rittenhouse got off. Like, well, that doesn't seem just. It's like, but they seem to have this belief that it's like, well, wait a sec, Kyle Rittenhouse was, he should be punished, but then these women shouldn't be. And
right.
instead of getting on the side of like, great, he was freed, now let's go farther.
Yeah.
And that's crazy to me.
Well, and I'll just add,
the perfect moment to get them free.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Yes. And I think that this woman's lawyers are trying to leverage the Rittenhouse verdict.
As they should.
The other court case that nobody heard about was with, I believe his first name is Andrew, but his last name is Coffey.
The fourth, actually.
He shot a cop in self-defense who it
was a SWAT team raid. Basically.
It was a SWAT team. But here's the thing. Say her name. This was Breonna Taylor's boyfriend. And the media did not report that this was Breonna Taylor's boyfriend, who was acquitted of murder.
I didn't know that was him.
Yeah, that was him.
There you go.
No, the media didn't say it. They were like, Andrew Coffey, blah, blah, blah. But the other thing is that he's still going to serve time in prison because he illegally possessed the firearm that he legally used in self-defense. And that's just crazy. But that was Breonna Taylor's boyfriend, and the media is silent. And I'm just like, dude, hashtag say her name. That's what we heard all last year.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Well, if anyone can get us information on how to help Coffee, it will be great, because it's just totally unfair to be 30 years in jail because you were
defending yourself.
Right.
Literally, you were carrying a gun so that you could defend yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. And used it legitimately. That was
it just sounds like, modern cognitive dissonance where you can use it, but you can't have it.
Well, that's certainly what Binger, the prosecutor in the Rittenhouse trial, wanted to claim. Yeah, you've got a right to have this gun, but don't you dare use it. I mean, at one point, the other guy, I forget his name, was saying everybody should take a beating now and then. Like, okay,
really?
That's weird. No.
Would you like to have one after this, sir?
I know.
Yeah, right.
Do we need to accommodate that for you?
Because your prosecutorial argument is not that good.
Yeah.
Let's use it on you for a second. Maybe you'll get better.
That kind of reminds me of Jim Carrey and Liar Liar in some of those things.
Oh man. Well, I do want to show one thing before we move on to the next topic, and that's that the best piece that I have seen on this was Common Sense with Barry Weiss. Barry was the former New York Times columnist, and definitely recommend. That's Barry Weiss, Barry Bari Weiss WEISS.substack.com, and look for the media's verdict on Kyle Rittenhouse. This is pretty remarkably written. It's very well done, and is the best piece that I've seen on this thus far. Heavily recommend this piece as a great way of coming up to speed if you're not even there already. And then to learn more if you already are. So definitely recommend that piece as something well worth your time. And we shared that in the Weekend Insights weekly column that I put out on the Libertarian Christian Institute website. So check that out when you get a chance. So moving on from the Rittenhouse case, there's other weirdly named cities in the United States that have other things going on. Matt, tell us about what I can't even pronounce the name of this city. What's going on?
Just not too actually far from Kenosha in Wisconsin is Waukesha, Wisconsin. And over the weekend, unfortunately, I mean, this is a very tragic story, and just how a good time with families and Christmas can go horribly wrong and absolutely terribly tragic. And just learned within the last hour, the sixth person has passed away in this tragedy. A gentleman by the name of Darrell Brooks Jr., age 39, which is, I'm 39 too, which it's one of those things that you just kind of see appear in corollary and just say, man, you went there and wow. Anyway, he drove headlong into a parade in Waukesha, Wisconsin, injuring over 40 people and now killing 6. The last one to pass away was a young boy by the name of, excuse me here, I want to get his name right, Jackson Sparks. He's 8 years old, and it was just a absolute tragedy to see him pass like this. The speculations on why Darrell Brooks would do this has been wild. His social media was not necessarily kind to people of all sorts. So what the actual motivation for him to do this was is not yet clear. Probably may come clear as time goes on, or at least we go into a trial. But he has been identified more than once, and so it seems like he's the one who is at fault. So yeah, this is just a real tragedy. Unfortunately, nothing funny about this, but it's something that our listeners and people watching this should definitely know about if they haven't heard about it already, because it seems like that this one may get buried in the news source, because unfortunately it just doesn't fit the narrative. Yeah. So that's where we're at with that one.
Well, that is unfortunate. So we need to be paying attention to that, and then taking a look and praying for those families. Well, unfortunate to hear, and but and I don't mean to keep on with a somewhat dare I say sort of violent series of events, but we do have something else that has happened just today on Tuesday morning, which is the annual pardoning of turkeys by the U.S. standing president. And I thought it was interesting because one thing that did come up
he sits, though, not always standing, but.
Well, okay, that is true. Sometimes he doesn't know whether.
I'm sorry.
He's sitting or standing.
I was told in a comment last video that I was in that I should not try to interrupt with funny jokes.
Well, that's all right. We'll get there here and there.
Boring from now on. So.
He'll be entirely boring. But I do want to share this article that was on Reason over today, which was, of course, entitled "Thousands Beg the President Joe Biden for Mercy as He Pardons a Couple of Turkeys," which I thought was an unusual title. It's not generally something that you see as a corollary or some sort of announcement of the annual pardoning of turkeys. But what did end up happening during the press conference at about the same time is that one Stephen Nelson of the New York Post asked the president if he would indeed be pardoning anybody else, any actual people, as a Thanksgiving blessing, I suppose, which he is, of course. Biden does have the power to do. And of course, Biden then played it off as a joke, asking Nelson if he needed one. This was then followed up by a question to White House Press Secretary Jim Psaki, who also basically shrugged it off. And so there will not be any actual clemency for human beings who are serving time for victimless crimes or whatnot. And as we note here repeatedly at the Libertarian Christian Institute, the war on drugs only makes us dumber and is unjust to the extreme. And it's unfortunate that this continues to be the reality while we joke around about how turkeys need to get pardoned on a yearly basis and actual people don't get clemency at all. So
it only creates more crime.
Yeah, that's right. So I would definitely recommend this article. This is by Scott Shackford, published this morning and on Tuesday morning. So take this as another kind of a modicum of of sober reminder that while there are those of us who have, we are going to be celebrating Thanksgiving with our families this week, and wonderfully so. It's a great time to be thankful, and it's a great thing that we do that in the United States. That's great. But there are going to be people who are unjustly accused and unjustly imprisoned as a result of those unjust accusations. And so that is very unfortunate, but we want to kind of remind you of that. And then likewise, and if you're, this is going to be posted probably post Thanksgiving at this point. And I'll also note that if you haven't seen it already, there will be a post up on Libertarian Christian Institute website, which will be your annual reminder that communism kills, and reminding us that it was that in fact one of the one of the things that instigated the first Thanksgiving was the fact that the people of Plymouth Plantation were thankful that they were actually becoming prosperous again after their experiment in communist ideas, essentially, through at least in their economic system, and what they attempted to do with what they thought was a biblical experiment. And just so your annual reminder that communism is a bad idea.
Be thankful that the Calvinist Puritans found Jesus and capitalism.
Yes, exactly.
So are we saying
it didn't work?
Are we saying that the American colonists built back better before it was cold?
Well, they certainly built back better than Biden. And, so they figured themselves out a lot faster.
They didn't even build back. They just built.
Yeah.
Actually, it's my understanding.
To be fair, they
did
build back. So yeah. Well,
Why didn't they just dismantle the whole ship and build houses that way? Why'd they have to go through the process of cutting down lumber and trees and going through there? I'm just like, hey, look, a bunch of sawn-hewn logs that we can use for houses. We're not going back to England, folks. Let's just use it.
I don't have an answer for that, but perhaps you can ask Mr.
Maybe
Bradford
our friend from South America can help us.
So,
no, you're not from South America. You're from Mexico. I'm sorry.
Wow.
He's from Monterey, Texas.
I thought you were from Mexico. Didn't you move to El Salvador?
You've missed the joke. Matthew's missed the joke.
It's actually a difficult joke.
Is it?
It is actually a difficult joke.
It is.
Is it?
It's an inside joke.
Well, but Matt may actually be trying to segue into our next segment, which is about a Latin American country that has recently done some interesting work in promoting sound money. Yet again, we are talking about none other than El Salvador. Tell us what's been going on.
Okay, so it's super complicated. So it is a good news and bad news. Yeah. So the easiest way to summarize is Bukele, the president of El Salvador, wants to create a city specifically for either Bitcoiners moving in to that city inside of El Salvador with no income tax, and the city now, but this is not a private city. I thought it was going to be private. The infrastructure is going to be maintained by a 10% tax on sales tax. Okay. So I'm not sure about property tax, but it could be also. So the Bukele administration are experts on being as unclear as humanity possibly can be. So
their expertise lies in that.
The level of specialization is tremendous. So it's very weird because it kind of sounds like they wanted to do just an area for Bitcoin mining, but it was no. Actually, we want you guys to move. If you invest, let's say $100,000 in Bitcoin, you have the right to move into that city or to El Salvador in general, so on and so forth. So the big plan is, it looks like he's creating this private city, private neighborhood for Bitcoiners in general, so that Bitcoiners finance the government of El Salvador that has officially junk bonds, which means their interest rate is gigantic, well above 10%. And so they're offering Bitcoiners a bond for bonds for a total of $1 billion that half of it is going to go into buying Bitcoin, and the other half is going to be to do whatever projects the government does. So it's going to finance government projects. It's not going to finance private development. So that's what I'm saying is it sounds like it's great on some side, but it's not nowhere near. You see what I'm saying is
you almost had me there. I was almost telling my wife that we were going to have to learn Spanish and move down to El Salvador.
Everybody was, because it was like, hey, that's cool. It's like private city. No, it's not private. It's actually going to be the government. The federal government is going to be running it, and whatever expenditures are going to be paid with taxes inside there that are not income taxes, are just, it looks like it's sales taxes that happen inside of that city or that so there's also going to be, it looks like in the same place, going to be mining. Now,
do we know where in El Salvador this is going to be?
It's for sure going to be, as far as I understand, it's for sure going to be somewhere close one of the volcanoes, because that's kind of like the
they want a geothermal energy, that whole sucker.
So it's very close.
They don't want to hollow out an active volcano and turn it into an evil paradise.
So there's lots of good stuff. It sounds really good, but obviously there's going to be a lot of, for example, for the people that are not too trustworthy of Tether, it's extremely embedded into the project. It's a stable coin, which for everyone, the simplest way to see it, it's a crypto that follows the US dollar, so that when you have Bitcoin and you don't want to deal with the volatility for a while, you swap it to Tether and other stable coins, by the way. So I think in the private sector, that is fine. Some people like that kind of stability. Some people like to absorb volatility. Now, the problem is that since the government is getting involved, you're talking about people's taxes in the background supporting this system. That's where I'm like, I'm completely in favor of the free market. I think that's exactly because, for example, just so you guys know, that to keep it simple, a typical private bank that provides some type of tokens or liabilities to be used as money would have in their investments or assets, compared to the liabilities, 70% will be tokens or debts, and then the other will be equity, which will be the owner's own money. These guys have 0.03% of their own money invested in Tether, and the rest of their liabilities is just pure dollar tokens. Mm-hmm. It's very, very kind of risky. It's very strongly backed by the exchanges. We're perfectly okay with that, but the problem is that you have Salvadorian tax money involved in it, because this is for you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there's some good sides to it, and then some other sides are like
sketchy as heck.
Sketchy as heck. And one of the big things is that those bonds, kind of cool thing about it is that they're going to be tokens. They're not going to be typical bonds. So you have to buy them in. You have to buy them in exchanges in type of crypto exchanges. You're not going to buy them at Wall Street.
So are they going to be on? So this, I actually don't know this. Is it going to be on like the an Ethereum smart contract sort of thing, or is that going to be some other blockchain?
Blockstream is the name of the platform. Which
that's another smart contract platform. Yeah,
exactly. So it has that kind. I mean, for an economist, I'm fascinated, because that's a real life experiment, and we're going to be writing about it forever. It's just the serious concern is that since the government is involved, what's backing the whole thing? It's Salvadorians, taxpayers, and that's where I'm always like, you guys have to be very careful, because if it works out fine, not a problem.
Yeah,
but if it doesn't work out,
big double down bet, essentially. Yeah,
exactly. So, for example, since the national debt of El Salvador is really high, and the interests are gigantic, which means their bonds are officially junk.
Yeah.
Let's say 10 something, that those tokens, their bonds, they're going to pay you a year, somewhere around 6%. And if Bitcoin appreciates, you're going to get a little dividend.
Yeah.
Because it's backed by Bitcoin.
Right.
If it doesn't, you're not going to lose officially. You're still going to get that 6%. So it has a good it's a good deal, as long as the investment that the Salvadoran government does.
Yeah. So as long as the city does well in the end, then it ends up probably paying off. Otherwise, it's a disaster.
But because it's not going to be only in the city, I mean, that infrastructure, that
Yeah.
$500 million that's not going to go into Bitcoin is going to be spent on whatever projects
Yeah.
the government of El Salvador wants.
I
So
don't know.
what are
Never
those projects?
underestimate the powers of a politician to screw something up. So
That's
exactly
the concern, right? Yeah.
It's not a bad idea. It's just that the implementation is going to be like, just so you guys know that there's a lot of problems with the implementation with Bitcoin.
Mhm.
The main app they're using is what they call Chivo Wallet. And it's not really Bitcoin per se. It's really just like a little, it's a bank that has an app.
yeah.
It's a government bank that has an app at the end of the day that lets you buy Bitcoin.
It's so strange because the whole point around cryptocurrencies, one was the technology, but two was the decentralization of currency. But then this is like centralizing something that is innately decentralized. So how that plays out feels wrong.
The more that we see Bitcoin being adopted broadly, even by governments, keep in mind that part of the way in which governments are able to act so irresponsibly is when they are able to fund everything that they do with the money that they can print it on demand. Essentially, governments become more, and I'm going to say broadly speaking, conservative in the way that they use their funds when they don't have the ability to just, they have a limitation on how much they can tax realistically. It can be a lot, for instance, it can be a lot higher in the US than it is now, but they can't do everything, right? But when you can fund it through debt and when you can fund it through printing of new money, then that leaves massive floodgates opened for funny business, right? So it's interesting to kind of note that the more that Bitcoin kind of entrenches itself here, it kind of does incentivize better management. And even though we oppose the state in this regard, even so, it'll be interesting to see that how certain policies that may end up in the short and midterm being better than otherwise would have been possible could come to the forefront. I think that's kind of the most interesting thing about this. And I'm not the first person who's noted this. I'm actually kind of parroting the words of folks like Balaji Srinivasan, and various other kind of Bitcoin thinkers out there who kind of are connecting these pieces of kind of government as operating system with the sound money principles at times. So anyway.
I always wanted to game out an idea where you could have a governmental authority issue a currency, but they couldn't spend it. You know what I mean? See what that would be like.
That would be,
it is possible.
Yeah.
It is perfectly possible.
I don't see why not. I would one day like to game that out and see what that would be like.
Maybe not probably.
Write that paper, publish it. You can do
There
it.
you go.
I believe in you, Matt. All right. Well, that is going to conclude this week's edition of Good News, Bad News, Libertarian Christian Roundtable. I will remind everybody to please like the video, subscribe, and do all those nice things that everybody asked you to do at the end of every video. You know what they are. And then make sure and come and visit us at libertarianchristians.com. Send us email at contact via the contact or libertarianchristians.com/contact. And if you have a question you want to ask, let us know. We'll try to see if we can answer it for you. And until next time, we will see y'all later. And hey, have a good one and happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.